Good day, everyone. For today, we will study about the introduction to the study of globalization or the overview of globalization. We have four intended learning outcomes. First is to determine what globalization is and what it stands for in our contemporary world. Number two, differentiates the competing conceptions of globalization and undermine the various schools of thoughts and paradigms on globalization. Number three, understand the raison d'etre or reason justification for existence of globalizations, its goals and aspirations. Number four, equip students with 21st century learning and develop higher order thinking skills that will lead towards a deeper understanding of globalization and its role in the world, in the Philippine society, as well as its role in the formation of students in relation to their future professions. First, let us have analyze the meaning of globalization through a concept map. I have here a concept map. As you can see, at the bottom, we have here a globalization, which we have to define later on. And as we go on to the topic of overview of globalization, we have to analyze the three divisions of globalizations. Number one, political governance or leadership. Number two, economic dependence and interdependence. Number three, socio-cultural, legacy, and transformation. Above, you can see here the global connections as well as the global society. These three will work together in order for us to have the global interconnections and to have a global society. The three systems and structures are political, economic, and sociocultural. However, as time passed by, the more that the world is evolving, the more we have the modern technology, we have the cyber and digitized information system that will link us to what we call is the global interconnections. The following here into the global society will have now the intensified social relations and structure, as well as the pragmatic dynamic society and integrative dynamic society. Now let us analyze the meaning of globalization. What is globalization? When we talk about the contemporary world, we are living on the contemporary world, but we have to define what is globalization. What is the contemporary world? The globalization, it refers to the process by which more people across large distances become connected either for connectivity and interconnectivity in more different ways. If we go back to our concept map, the three systems and structures you can see here are political governance, economic dependence, and sociocultural legacy. These three will have to work together in order for us to have the global interconnections, or how are we going to be connected with one another across the globe. In short, when we talk about the contemporary world, looking back on the concept map, we can define the contemporary world as the modern world we are living. In globalization, different nations interact with each other. For example, in economic dependence and interdependence, together with political governance and social cultural legacy and transformation. A leader of a country will have to go to another country to have a talk, or will have to work together for what we call as economic globalization. That is why we have what we call as APEC Summit, ASEAN, European Union, and others. The territorialization, on the other hand, is the process through which the constraints of physical space lose their hold on social relations. It can either be because of different influences or complexity. It is the interaction of the people in the process of integration, economy, politics, and culture. In globalization, most especially in economic, where people or leaders of the country will have to talk or be connected with one another because of the economy, we also have what we call is capitalism. Capitalism is the process of globalization in which capitalism expands across the globe as powerful economic actors seeking profit in global markets and impose their rules everywhere. It is also known as neoliberalism. On the other hand, in globalization, we can connect it to social cultural, where people be connected or interconnected with one another because of their culture. Means different things to different people. Number one is Korean Pentecostal missionary, where new opportunity to spread the faith and convert lost souls abroad. Dominican immigration in the US, the growing new roots while staying deeply involved in the home village. The Chinese apparel worker, there's a chance to escape rural poverty by cutting threads of designer jeans. American executive, managing a far-flung supply chain to get products to stores. And Filipino global justice advocate, the rules of global game that favor the rich north over the south poor. In the general consensus of the theorists, we can define the globalization which involves cultural, economic, political transformations. In argument, theorizing on how these domains intersect, overlap, and influence one another. We have three competing views of theories or the roots of globalization or the why do we have globalization in the first place. Number one is globalizing forces have been evolving since the beginning of human history, or over 5,000 years. Number two is the globalization began with the rise of a modern era and the development of capitalism 500 years ago. It was done by Immanuel Wallerstein. Number three, the globalization became intense in the second half of the second century, or the post-industrial economies and contemporary reconstructing of capitalism. Immanuel Wallerstein was the one or the proponent of, of capitalism and the world system theory. According to Manuel Wallerstein, it was the emergence of the modern world economy in the 16th century Europe that we saw the economic predominance of market rate, where economic globalization happened, where capitalism and a world economy are observed sides of the same coin. Now we go to Immanuel Wallerstein theory of the world system theory. According to Immanuel Wallerstein, globalization is essentially the expansion of capitalist system around the globe, where we have what we call as the core system, which is our dominant classes were supported by strong states as they exploit labor, resources, trade opportunities than the peripheral areas. The core nation on the world system theory is the capitalist nations which highly developed country with able to have a finished products. We can say that the core is a big country. When we have this theory or of the world system theory, we're not sure if they are into it until the days today. Now, for the core, they have the natural resources present on their country or in their nations, which means they have means to do it. They can develop or manufacture raw materials. They can export high profit or manufactured products. They can import raw materials, but not process the raw materials itself. Meaning to say, the other countries will have to get from them in order to have the materials. On the other hand, the semi-peripheral nations are the combinations of the core, rather, these semi-peripheral nations can do both. It can either be exporting or importing of goods. The peripheral nations is developing nations which struggling and exploited nations. They export raw materials or they have the materials, but they get the materials, they bought the materials from the core. meaning to say they are selling the products, but they are buying the materials with inexpensive amount. They are selling the materials in small amount, but they get the materials on a higher amount or expensive amount. We can connect the core to a China, for example. The China is a big country. It is a developed countries. They can get their materials. They can manufacture raw materials. They are capitalist nations. They have the finished products. On the other hand, the periphery, we can associate it with the Philippines. The Philippines is getting the materials to China. We are getting the materials in higher price, but we are selling the materials on our country as a smaller amount. Meaning to say, meaning to say, in the world system theory, the core is the one benefiting in the system than the periphery and the semi-periphery. Another theory of globalization is the polity theory. It the state remains an important component of world society, but primarily the attention goes to the global culture and organization. Unlike with the world system theory where they focus on more on economics, the word polity theory focusing on the society, the global culture, and the organization. The last theory of globalization is the world culture theory. The world culture theory is indeed a new and important but less homogeneous than world polity theory. They are more on the process of relativization or dependence and interdependence. They are more on a single entity and the relationship to this to the global presence. The emergence of globalization happened for a long period of time in the 16th century in Europe as the original source. There are the trade connections on their own terms. They brought their culture to different regions by settling vast areas and defined the ways in ways that different people were to interact with each other. Now we have to talk about the globalization and the expanding market. A while ago, we talked about that globalization happens also in economy, where we have the trade. Now, in expanding market, this is the process of offering a product or service to a wider section of an existing market or into a new demographic or psychographic or geographic market. This is something about economic system. We have the capitalists, we have the linkages, we have the globalization takes place in many spheres for many reasons. Now, given the fact that globalization exists, there's the reason why globalization will not make the world homogeneous. In globalization, we have to take note that in culture, economy, and the people, they differ from one another, which it helps us in connecting with one culture to another. Now, the question is globalization harmful? Well, the answer is this. Globalization is harmful to the well being of individuals, countries, and cultures if the market is the driving force. It is bound to exacerbate or worsen inequality by creating winners and losers, or the impact of capitalism. Going back to the world system theory, the core only benefits, but the periphery and the semi-periphery, they are the losers. Meaning to say, the core is the winner. They have the material, they have the resources, they can sell their products to higher price, and there is no reason not to buy the product since the semi-periphery and the periphery are getting the products from the core. We also have the interdisciplinary understanding of globalization. Political scientists, economists, sociologists, and historian. The following people understands and studies more about the globalization. The political scientists, because from the division of globalization or the process of globalization, the politics or the political government or the leaders, they are the one who's in charge for ASEAN, for APEC Summit, for European Union, and others under the globalization or the different intergovernmental organizations like Intermonetary Fund, World Bank, and the World Trade Organization. They have to work together, forming alliances with other countries or organizations with other countries using the global communication system. The economist, on the other hand, studies more about the economy, the integration through international trade of markets in goods. Like, for example, they are studying the measures of barriers through such as tariffs and the transport costs, the trade volumes, the price related measures. They study more about the foreign direct investment, increased trade in the intermediate product, international outsourcing of services like the call center industry, international movement of persons like our OFWs or overseas Filipino workers. The sociologist, on the other hand, it studies the people. It studies the view of globalization on the ongoing process that involves the interconnected changes in cultural and social spheres. Going back to the meaning of globalization, it is the interaction to other nations. Meaning to say, if we have the sociologists, they studies about the culture and the social spheres. The ideologies, the values, the ideas, the norms, the beliefs, the expectations. Lastly, the historians. The historians follow rather than lead the way. The globalization is defined on the interconnection of places for far distant from each other. Globalization is still too entangled with world history, global history, and transnational history because it pursues processes and stages of development. So, there, thank you for listening, everyone. I hope you learned something about the overview or the introduction to globalization. Have a nice day and see you on my next lecture. Goodbye.